wonderful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Great events, programs, and student activities.
All the countries and research.
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us for the first time here for ACC's TV Dialogue Houston, we can be found now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Again on Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. As always, at the top of the hour, let me thank you for your thoughtful calls, emails, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired here on ACC's TV Dialogue Houston. After all, this is your public affairs show now in its 30th season, but also very grateful for your ideas for topics, guests, and subject matters to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. Have a great show for you today. One that actually I realized I hadn't done for a while, and that is to spotlight and talk about our wonderful Port of Houston, a major thing in our city, who greatly involves the economy of this city and has so much to do with the growth of the area. Let me just get the little facts out of the way so everybody can focus on what I'm talking about. First of all, it's the #1 U.S. port in America, the #1 U.S. port. That little ship channel that we see, that little thing that kind of maneuvers and curves all around, the 52 miles of the ship channel has 200 private companies along those 52 miles. In 2018, through that wonderful Port of Houston came 200 million tons of international cargo. The economic impact of the wonderful Port of Houston is, get this number, $801.9 billion. The economic impact is also about jobs and jobs and jobs, because there's a lot of people involved in the port. And so I'm just going to stop there because I have a guest who can tell you everything about the port and then some, and how it works with the community and vice versa. And that is the Director of Community Relations, who is Maria Aguirre. And I'm just so glad to have her here. Maria, welcome.
Thank you.
And you have been with the port now just a little while, but you have dived in deeply from what I hear. So tell me from your perspective, how are things going on our wonderful Port of Houston?
Yeah, it's been a great adventure to be here. I've been at the port for almost 2 years now. I'm inching into it. And it's been amazing. The impact that you were mentioning, Larry, I mean, it's not just about the economic impact, which is sizable, but also the jobs. We represent 3.2 million jobs nationwide.
Whoa, 3.2 million?
Yes.
Wow.
I know. And out of that, it's 1.3 jobs in Texas, and then 3.2 nationwide. So it is a sizable impact. And I'll tell you a short story. When I was applying to jobs, I saw this job posting, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was like, oh, there is a port in Houston.
How can you be a port when that's just for inland, right? Right.
Yeah, I did not know. And so part of what I interviewed with was saying, if I didn't know, there's others who don't. And how can we not know of this incredible economic engine that we have right in our backyards? So that's been my mission since I got to the port, is to get people to know us better and to see us as a place that they have access to. We are their port. We are a government entity that is there to really bring value to our state and to our nation, and we want people to feel access to it. So that's really what I've been doing for the past year and a half, 2 years, is bringing people into the port and bringing the port out into the communities.
And that's so important because, I've been in Houston since 1968, and people don't know about the port. I know that to be fact. When I worked in City Hall and city government, you tell them about the port, you tell them how big it is, you tell them what it does and how important it is. They don't think about it. It's just kind of this big part of that side of town in the East End that's out of sight, out of mind. If I go over the Ship Channel Bridge, I look around, oh, I guess that's part of the port. That's about all they get. They don't get beyond that. And they see the cars that come in on the left and right as you go over the bridge. All these cars are parked. Where did they come from? They had to come from somewhere. They just didn't show up. So they came off those ships over there. That's where they came from. But people just don't realize the impact. And now that through Houston Community College, when we talk about jobs and training, there are many jobs along the port that we can train for that pay excellent wages. I mean, this is not, you got to have skills, but they pay well.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually manage our maritime education as well. And so my maritime education manager goes out to the high schools. We are actually close partners with HCC and a lot of different entities. And we tell people we have 100 careers that you can have in the maritime industry.
Wow.
100. Mm-hmm.
I had a kid that told me someone came from the port and talked to him about one of those job skills in the maritime industry. And he realized that he said, change what I want to be. I said, what do you want to be now? I want to be a tugboat captain.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, we want to get the word out there to all of the neighborhoods, especially the neighborhoods that have been historically underserved or disconnected.
Yep.
A lot of these neighborhoods that are going into these different trade opportunities, we want them to see the maritime industry as a place where they can really come and thrive.
Right. And then the other guy said, because y'all did a good job of explaining the different jobs to him, he said, that's great, but there's one better than that. I want to be the pilot. The pilot is the one that really makes the money.
Yes. Yes.
So, and the guy said he didn't even know what a pilot was. He kept thinking of an airline pilot. No, the pilot who brings in the ships and guides them through the port, and they can't move without them. You can't go anywhere until the pilot is there. So they learned so much just in that one presentation about the port, which I thought was great.
Yeah, that's what we want to increase access for people. And even the trains, for example. Trains are something that a lot of people experience, especially when you can't cross because there's a train.
Oh, yeah, don't get started on that on the East End. We'll have a whole discussion about that.
I know. But it is interesting to see how our country is interconnected through the trains and the trucks and the ports, and how it all plays into this big network that provides us everything we need and that brings in and takes out everything that we are interchanging with the other countries. So it is interesting to see it as the bigger network.
And I think when people finally realized in the latest crisis we had on supply chain issues and things were backed up, and they showed the pictures of, I think it was the port of San Diego or one of them, with all the ships just sitting, waiting to come into port. And then people realized there's a shortage of this, a shortage of that. Well, why is it sitting on that ship out there who can't get in? Because of all kinds of other issues related. So one domino effect affects the other and just keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been getting a lot of questions about that. And fun fact, Larry, because I heard you say that we were the #1 port. And this is, if you know about ports, all of the ports are #1 at something. So there's always this fun debate.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you what we are #1 at so that the other ports don't call me mad.
Okay.
So
all right.
we are the #1 export state. Texas is the #1 export state.
Ah, okay.
No, we are also the #1 for waterborne tonnage. So the tons of materials that are coming into our ship channel. And we are the #1 export region. So we are #1 at a lot of things still.
Well, there we go. See, so I was right. You're still #1.
And I want to mention something that's really interesting. The Houston Ship Channel, like you mentioned, has over 200 facilities. People think of the Port of Houston as all of that, and that is not the case. The Port of Houston represents 8 of those facilities.
Okay.
8 of those 200. Everything else is private facilities and private entities that are along the Houston Ship Channel.
But they do work with the ships, with the Port of Houston as getting their goods and services out, right? They
do, but a lot of them have their own systems to get the goods in and out. So it's interesting. We are the federal sponsor of the ship channel. We essentially help maintain the highway that all the boats transit through. Right.
Okay, that's important though, because the navigational things, y'all, it wouldn't, without the port, you don't go up and down that, because it's not that big, it's not that wide, it takes skills to get through that opening and to do it so well. So let's ask this. People get a chance to actually come. You have a wonderful program called Awareness, Feedback, and Investment. The awareness part is the one that people love, because once they find out about it, they usually take advantage and avail themselves of it. And that's the Sam Houston boat tour. Probably one of the most popular things y'all do, because people love it. And once they've discovered that you can do that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So funny enough, I manage that too.
That's why I'm raising it, because I thought you would fall under your belly.
Yeah, so the Sam Houston Boat Tour is a phenomenal offering that the port has. And part of it is because a lot of the ports throughout the country are ports that you can go into, you can see it. With the Port of Houston, you can't really go into the port as easily. So we
Right.
want to offer an opportunity for people to experience the ship channel. So this is a free boat tour that's an hour and a half for everybody. You register through our website and you can come on the boat, bring your family, and have an hour and a half of going up and down the ship channel. And we also offer special tours. So if you're a nonprofit group, a Boy Scouts group, an entity that really wants to take your members out, we offer special tours just for your group to go up and down the ship channel so that you can see what the port is about.
And it really is a fascinating experience. You learn so much on it, and I highly recommend it to anybody. It's also great for children and youth and kids to get them to see it, understand it. It's an educational opportunity, unlike any other, actually, because you're not going to get that close up hardly anywhere else in that kind of environment.
Well, and on the equity piece, I wanted to mention, since I got to the port, we've been bringing a lot of translation services. So now all of our signage is translated, our boat tour is translated, and we have booklets for the kids to do puzzles and to find different scavenger hunts throughout the ship. And that is all going to be in English and Spanish so that everybody can feel like they understand what they're seeing.
Yeah. And y'all do a great job of community outreach. You just celebrated a wonderful Hispanic Heritage Month in September with a great program. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so we actually launched a DEI, actually a whole branch with business equity and DEI. So that's something that I really want to bring up, the business equity component of what we're doing. The port, like you heard, the economic impact is sizable, but we wanted to make sure that small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority businesses had access to this economic engine. So now we are very intentional about bringing small businesses, women-owned businesses, to do business with the port, to be a part of our contracts, to be a part of our procurement. So we've been really intentional about having that component as what we're doing with our minorities and our DEI efforts. And for Hispanic Heritage Month, we're really recognizing our Latino contributors. We had a lot of different events at our terminals. Like I mentioned, we have 8 of them. So there's been a lot of going out to the terminals and really offering a piece of our culture to our other teammates. That's
so important because people don't realize they can do business with the port. They can be a subcontractor. They can do lots of things because with an entity that large, it needs lots of different things to make it work every day. From the simple things, from office supplies to you name the list. The list is endless.
Yes,
and so it's very important to know that you can do business with the port.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because a lot of people think they have to be in engineering or dredging or in shipping, and that's not the case. We need signage, we need translation, we need food.
Yeah, exactly. So this program that you have, awareness, feedback, and investment, I really think it's a neat one because there's also a citizens advisory council, is there not?
Yes.
People who live along the port who are impacted probably more directly by the port in their communities and neighborhoods than others, which I think is fantastic to get their input and to seek out their input. Yeah,
so we have a group that meets with our chairman. The port has a committee, a commission, and they meet with our chairman once a quarter, and they're representatives throughout the Houston Ship Channel that bring priorities, needs, news from the communities, and ideas on how we can contribute to what's going on with our neighbors. So it's a really phenomenal group. We have representatives from the East End, from Pasadena, Baytown, Shore Acres. Everybody comes together and really tells us a little bit about what's going on so that then we can be a part of the communities that are our neighbors.
And the third component is investments, which I think is neat. So if you have an event and you would like the port to maybe think about helping to sponsor or co-sponsor that event, they'll look at that because they have something called community grants, which goes a long way in helping these little programs that we all try to put together in our communities. And I've seen the port do this. I've seen the signage of things that the port has co-sponsored or helped to make happen in partnership. And it's a great relationship to do the community events and to get out there.
Yeah, we actually just launched a $2 million green space investment because we were looking at really health equity and how we could invest in green spaces to contribute to health equity. So we're looking at projects in East Harris County and in the city of Houston to invest in to create more equitable green spaces, aside from the grants program, which is phenomenal.
Well, I have one I'm going to throw out at you. Just because I went to the night out, the police community night
Uh-huh.
out thing the other day at the Gulfton area,
Mhm.
and the Gulfton area needs trees. So
Mhm.
trees for Gulfton is kind of the thing because they're the hottest part of Houston. They have no canopy, no trees, no shade. They don't even, some of the bus stops don't even have coverings. So there's this whole effort. Their medium temperature is 103 degrees. It is the
Wow.
hottest place in Houston because of the
Mhm.
lack of canopy, the lack of trees, the lack of shade, the lack of cover, et cetera. And so there's no whole movement now with the Nature Conservancy, Houston Nature Conservancy, and a whole bunch of other people, super neighborhood in the Gulfton area, to do trees, which makes sense.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's a great thing that a lot of corporations could help sponsor or co-sponsor to help them in that area. But it's all those things. It's just a matter, as you and I've talked about, thinking creatively about the opportunities and challenges and seeing how one can be of service and be of help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will take you up on that so that we can connect with them because we have a lot of partners that help us plant the trees throughout our terminals to help
Yeah,
with the temperature. So I'd love to connect with that.
that'd be a great project, and it's needed. I founded a charter school in the Gulfton area called Cerninos. I'm very familiar with the Gulfton area and all of its needs and concerns. Is one of the most fascinating parts of Houston, as far as I'm concerned. The international flavor is there. Everybody is there in the Gulfton area.
Yeah.
And they all coexist and get along well. And they're very sensitive to their neighborhood. And all of the Latin and Central American countries, they seem to all have figured out how to make it work for each one of them in their respective spaces. But it does need some help. So let's shift a little bit. You were part of a group, the first cohort group of this thing called Houston 2036. And Houston 2036 is this movement to look at how we as Houstonians want to be and want to see our city flourish in the next 13 years to 2036, which is what? Houston's 200th anniversary. We'll be 200 years old. And so we started this wonderful little movement of 2036. Maria got to be part of the first 36 people to be part of that. So tell us about your cohort experience, and we're going to talk about the upcoming conference in January.
Absolutely. So it was a great honor to be a part of it. Really, I would say that there's a couple of things that I took away from the experience. One is the incredible connections that you can make when you sit with like-minded people who are trying to make a difference in their city. There's real power in that. Also, the incredible lessons that we were able to see and get through and learn together as we were wrestling with what equity means to each other, to different demographics, to different professions. And like you were saying, at the different levels, at the economic level, the political level, the spiritual, personal level. And so it was truly a journey that was meant to transform us, but also help us figure out how to transform the city that we live in to make it more equitable. So it was a remarkable experience, and I'm really grateful that I got to be a part of the cohort and what I'm seeing it now do.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you were able to be a part of it, and you were a major contributor to it, and really involved and very passionate about it. So we thank you for that. And she's agreed to be part of this planning committee now, steering committee, to plan the conference in November on equity on January 21st. We'll tell you more about that on Dialogue Houston in future segments. But it's important to look at this equity question. Let's talk about that for a moment. Equity is really the key going forward in a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic society. The interconnectedness, interdependentness, and relativeness of equity, how it impacts so much of what happens and conversely what does not happen, and how we value and see each other in the world of diversity as equal human beings. Equity is, you can't say you value the other as an equal human being and yet not afford them everything they need under the banner of equity through the equity lens to help them succeed. Mm-hmm. Because you and I both know, as we've talked about this thing for the year with the cohort group, it is not enough anymore in our society to talk about human beings surviving or even thriving. Human beings were meant to flourish. How do we help each human being to flourish to the fullness of their God-given potential? That should be our goal, should be our only goal. And so you talk so well about this equity thing. How do you see equity played out as we go forward? Because, and I'll just use one example, and I got to use it because it just struck me. The whole thing about what happened, unfortunately, with the shooting in Uvalde.
Mhm.
What came out of the comments of some of the people there, some from law enforcement and some from others, is that people did not feel, the parents did not feel that those others valued their children enough to live up to their oath of office to go in and rescue them.
Mhm.
One lady said, does my little Latino child not deserve the same thing you would do if these were Anglo children? And then one officer said and made this comment, if my son had been in there, I would not have been outside. Well, okay, but that was a child inside. It wasn't your son, but it was a child. It happened to be a Latino child. Are you saying that you didn't value that life as much as you value others? That's why you did not act?
Mhm.
This plays itself out in so many ways, that are conscious and unconscious. The whole thing about conscious, unconscious bias, all that plays into this. But that can't be going forward. That's just the point. None of this can be going forward.
Yeah.
We're all equal as human beings, or we're not. There's no kind of sorter, there's no masomenas, there's no, it either is or it is not.
Mhm.
I mean, am I wrong about that? I mean,
No, I'm with you, and I know that I've as a Latina who came to the States at 17 and found this place to be larger than life and also more intimidating that could be. I get what you're saying, and I've experienced my share of difficult adventures navigating the country and the dynamics that you find here. I think that it's important for equity and for everybody's sake that we find that common humanity. And you've mentioned this before, Larry, but we have to see each other as human beings and nothing more than that. There is not them and us and the colors of our skin and where we come from. We are all human beings and we should be valued as such. And I think having people at the table, the work that's being done to bring different people to the table who are experts in different capacities, experts in education, experts in the personal and the empathy and the spiritual, experts in the government, so that they can come together and bring ideas that bring equity to all of the spheres. Because once we have equity throughout these spheres, we're going to be able to see us and everybody flourish the way that we're hoping. So I think it takes us all coming together with brilliant ideas so that we can really bring equity to the forefront at every level.
Yeah, well said. And I think it is also about being proactive in how we vision this stuff and how we think about it. And I think it's time to quit reacting to all the negative stuff, all the issues and the poverty and the problems. It gets to the point where you have to change the paradigm and you have to change the perspective to say what can be done, what ought to be done, what should be done. And I think it starts by asking some basic questions. When it comes to human beings, what is the fair ethical treatment of all human beings? We've never even established what that baseline looks like. We've never, because without that, you can't ask the two antecedent questions that go with that. All human beings' lives matter. All human beings are equal. That kind of works together. But if you haven't established what that baseline looks like, or what is the fair, moral, ethical treatment of all human beings, then anything goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to do crazy things like bus people to other parts of the country, like you name the list, because you do not see that as a human being. You see that as an it, as a thing to be exploited, to be used to make a point that totally dehumanizes. You use the word humanity. That totally dehumanizes the human being back to an it. I understand it's because I understand slavery. I understand racism. I get it when you can make the human being an it, because then you can treat it any way you want to treat it because it's not a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you fall into that trap and you encourage others to view that trap and use that lens in dealing with human beings, then you're on a slippery slope that just goes further down. There's no up in that.
Yeah. I think for a long time we assumed we had a shared understanding of what humanity was and how we
Yeah.
should treat everybody. And we're realizing that that wasn't the case. We're having to start back again. Let's really have a shared understanding. Let's find a shared humanity so that we can get to the point where
Right.
we need to be.
Right. I think that you made a good point. It was an assumed shared understanding when the numbers worked in other people's favor. Now with the demographic shift and change, the numbers are changing and it doesn't work. The formula doesn't work anymore. So that fakeness of the fakeness of saying I care about you as a human being when the numbers were in my favor, it means I still was in power. I still had all the power. But now that that's shifting, I don't know if I really want this thing to be equal because that takes away from me now and dilutes my power, and I'm not for that. But democracy is built on equal shared power, one voice, one vote. And I think it's challenging everything that we thought we knew about how society and democracy should work. And now it's all being questioned because those who have power are fearful of losing power. And it's always about power. You when it gets down to it, just follow the power. That old phrase, follow the money, follow the power. You understand exactly what's happening. So we got about a minute left. I'm gonna give you the closing comment. Anything we've left out that you want to make sure we get in, please do so.
Well, I just want to encourage people to really take a look at what we are putting together, take a look at our equity conference, and then really take a look at equity as a whole. Take a look at what is surrounding you. Often we think we know what we're seeing and we know what people are experiencing, and we don't. We don't have this shared understanding. We don't see or experience the same things. So I want to encourage people to ask other people questions. Try to see the world the way that others see the world, and try to experience the world the way others experience the world, because that is where I think we can find that shared humanity that we're missing.
Yeah, wonderfully said. Thank you. You can reach Maria Aguirre at the Fort of Houston. She's Director of Community Relations. You can book that wonderful Sam Houston Boat tour through her. So reach out and talk to her about your projects and your community projects, etc., and be part of that. Maria, I can't thank you enough for being part of this Dialogue Houston discussion today. Quick few closing comments. What we really been talking about are values. And what do we value? And what are our core values? And do we live by the principles of what we espouse to be our core values? And how do we hold people accountable to those core values? Because the word we have not used yet is accountability, and accountability is the word because that's the nastiest, dirtiest word you can use with adults. Nobody likes to be held accountable. So it's about change, and change is a painful process for many human beings. And so as we move down this road together, as we look at values, as we look at integrity, as we look at relationships built on mutual trust and respect, as we look at all these things going forward, we want you to be with us on this journey to 2036. We'll be talking about that more as we go in the weeks to come, leading up to the conference in January. I really thank you all for being part of this week. I always enjoy your comments in between the shows, so please continue to do so. And we'll continue to do and bring you guests and subject matters that we can all have a great dialogue and discussion about. It is important that we figure out a way out as a community, as a people, between this us and them, between all this division we have, all this divisiveness, all this terrible, terrible people just so entrenched in what they think and believe is the truth about the other. And if you listen to any of the campaign ads right now, it'll just make your heart sick. I mean, they're so negative, they're so disruptive about human beings. I gotta go, time's out as usual. So let me just say this until we see each other again. Please be well, be safe, and peace, power, and love.